Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. Everyone knows that quote. It gets printed on coffee mugs and Instagram posts and motivational wallpapers, but almost nobody understands what it actually means. Buffett is not talking about stocks. He's not talking about avoiding bad trades. He is talking about something much bigger, a complete operating system for how money moves through your life. Every decision, every purchase, every yes and every no. Most people treat money like a river that flows through them. Buffett treats it like a fortress that must be defended. What this video is going to walk you through is not a list of tips. It is a protocol. 7 rules that Warren Buffett has followed for over 70 years, each one with a name and a purpose. These are not ideas he talks about in interviews to sound smart. These are the actual mechanics behind how he turned a newspaper delivery route into a $160 billion fortune. And the part that should bother you is that none of them are complicated. A 12-year-old could understand every single one. The hard part was never the knowing, it was always the doing. 7 rules, 7 names, each one a brick in the wall between you and financial ruin. By the time this video ends, you will either start building that wall, or you will keep pretending the weather will always be good. Stay with us. If this kind of thinking about money is new to you, hit subscribe. This channel breaks down how the financial machine actually works. No jargon, no fluff. Buffett once said, "In business, I look for economic castles protected by unbreachable moats." He was talking about companies, Coca-Cola, GEICO, American Express, businesses with something around them that keeps competitors from getting in. But the principle applies to your personal finances in exactly the same way. Your moat is the distance between what can go wrong in your life and what would destroy you. The wider the moat, the safer the castle. Most people have no moat at all. One unexpected bill and the castle falls. 32% of Americans do not have any emergency fund. 0. Nothing between them and a financial catastrophe except the hope that nothing bad happens. And something always happens. The car breaks, the roof leaks, the company restructures, a medical bill arrives that insurance decided not to cover. Without a moat, each one of these events becomes a crisis. With a moat, 6 months of expenses sitting in a boring savings account earning almost nothing, each one becomes an inconvenience. The difference between a crisis and an inconvenience is a few $1,000s and a decision you made 6 months ago. But the moat goes deeper than just cash. Insurance is the second layer, and the one almost nobody builds until it is too late. Health insurance, disability insurance, term life if people depend on your income. These sound boring. They are boring. That is the point. The things that protect you are never exciting. A moat is just water and dirt. It is not beautiful. It is not fun to build. But when the army shows up at your gate, it is the only thing standing between you and everything you have built falling apart. Buffett discovered GEICO in 1951 when he was 20 years old. He took a train to Washington, D.C. and knocked on the company's door on a Saturday morning. A man named Lorimer Davidson spent 4 hours explaining the business to him. What Buffett saw was a moat so wide it was almost unfair, a direct-to-consumer model that eliminated expensive insurance agents, creating profit margins 4 times higher than any competitor. He put 75% of his net worth into GEICO stock that year. Eventually, he bought the entire company. He did not buy it because it was flashy. He bought it because the moat was indestructible. Berkshire Hathaway currently holds $381 billion in cash reserves. That number sounds insane until you hear Buffett explain it. He once wrote to his shareholders, "Cash is to a business as oxygen is to an individual. Never thought about when it is present, the only thing in mind when it is absent." He doesn't keep that cash because he is afraid. He keeps it because cash is the ultimate moat. When every other company is scrambling for survival during a crisis, Berkshire walks in with a checkbook and buys assets at a discount. The moat does not just protect, It creates opportunities that only exist for people who prepared. Ask yourself one question. If you lost your income tomorrow, no paycheck, no side hustle, nothing coming in, how many months could you survive without borrowing a single dollar? That number is the width of your moat. If the answer is less than 3 months, you do not have a castle, you have a tent, and the first storm that comes will flatten it. If you are already starting to rethink how you handle money, write in the comments right now, I am building my moat. Because the first step is deciding that protection comes before everything else. Pilots have a word that applies to money more than most people realize. Runway. In aviation, runway is the distance you need to take off safely, or to abort a landing without crashing. Too little runway, and you are at the mercy of whatever happens next. The same concept applies to every bank account in the country. Your financial runway is the number of months you can keep your life running with zero income coming in, no paycheck, no freelance work, no borrowing. Just you and whatever you have saved. That number determines how much control you have over your own decisions, because when your runway is short, every decision becomes about survival instead of strategy. The average American has a financial runway of about 2.5 weeks. Think about that number, 17 days. That means a single missed paycheck puts most families into crisis mode. A layoff does not just cost a job, it costs everything connected to it. The mortgage, the car payment, the grocery bill, the kids' activities. Within 3 weeks, the dominoes start falling. And once they start, catching up becomes almost impossible, because now you're borrowing at 18% interest just to keep the lights on. The short runway did not just fail to protect you, it made the problem exponentially worse. Calculating your runway number takes 5 minutes and a calculator. Add up every dollar that leaves your account each month. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, subscriptions, transportation, minimum debt payments. That is your monthly burn rate. Multiply it by 12. That is your target. Everything below that number means you are operating on a runway that could run out before you get airborne. Most financial planners recommend 6 months. Buffett would tell you 12. The disagreement is about the minimum, not the direction. Buffett wrote to his shareholders, "Cash is to a business as oxygen is to an individual, never thought about when it is present, the only thing in mind when it is absent." He did not build Berkshire Hathaway by being the smartest investor in the room. He built it by always having cash when everyone else was gasping for air. During the 2008 financial crisis, banks were begging the government for bailouts. Buffett walked in with a checkbook. He invested $5 billion in Goldman Sachs on terms so favorable that Goldman had no choice but to accept. Preferred shares paying 10% annually, plus warrants worth billions more. That deal was only possible because Buffett had runway when nobody else did. What nobody talks about is the emotional cost of a short runway. When you are 3 weeks away from not making rent, your brain does not function the same way. Harvard researcher Sendhil Mullainathan found that financial scarcity reduces cognitive capacity by the equivalent of 13 IQ points, roughly the same as losing a full night of sleep. You are literally dumber when you are broke, not because of who you are, but because of what the stress does to your brain. Every decision becomes harder, every risk feels bigger, and the irony is devastating. The mental bandwidth you need to build a runway is exactly what disappears when you do not have one. There is a painful paradox buried in this rule. The people who need financial runway the most, the ones living closest to the edge, are exactly the ones who find it hardest to build. When every dollar is already spoken for, saving feels impossible. But here is what the math shows. Saving $50 a month, the cost of 2 dinners out, builds a $600 cushion in a year. It is not a fortress, but it is the difference between calling a tow truck and calling a payday lender. Small runway is still runway, and the alternative is none at all. In 2008, while banks were collapsing and the S&P 500 was dropping 57% from its peak, Buffett did not panic. He did not sell. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times titled, "Buy American I Am." He had the cash, the runway, to move toward the fire while everyone else was running away from it. Over the next decade, those crisis purchases returned hundreds of billions in value. Runway does not just keep you alive during a storm, it lets you harvest what the storm leaves behind. If this is starting to change how you think about money, hit the like button. It helps more people find this breakdown. Buffett has described his entire life in 4 words: a product of compound interest. Not intelligence, not connections, not luck, compound interest. He calls it the snowball. All you need is wet snow and a really long hill. The wet snow is your money. The hill is time. And the longer you roll it, the bigger it gets. Not at a steady pace, at an accelerating pace. That is the part most people miss. Compounding does not add, it multiplies. Here is what that looks like with actual numbers. $300 a month invested at 10% average annual return. Start at 25, and by 65, you have over $678,000. But wait 10 years. Start the exact same amount at 35, and you end up with $227,000, same contribution, same return, same discipline. $451,000 vanished because of 10 years. Time is not a variable in the equation. Time is the equation. Buffett bought his first stock at 11 years old, 6 shares of City Service at $38 each. He spent $114.75, money he earned delivering newspapers. He jokes that he wasted the first 11 years of his life. By the time he was 30, he had $1 million. By 50, $250 million. By 70, $50 billion. Almost all of it came after 60. That is compounding, slow for decades, then an explosion that looks like magic, but is really just math meeting time. Charlie Munger put it plainly, the elementary mathematics of compound interest is one of the most important models there is on Earth. Yet a study by the Securities and Exchange Commission found that fewer than 1 in 3 Americans can correctly answer basic questions about how compound interest works. People nod when they hear the term. They understand it in theory, but they do not feel it in their bones, which is why they interrupt it so casually. A month skipped here, a withdrawal there. Each interruption invisible in the moment, catastrophic over decades. Picture this. You have $50,000 in a retirement account at age 35. You need a car. You cash it out, pay the taxes and penalties, and drive off the lot in something shiny. You did not lose $50,000. You lost $870,000. That is what $50,000 becomes at 10% over 30 years. The car you bought will be worth $2,000 in 10 years. The investment you killed would have been worth almost $1 million. Every interruption in compounding has a cost you will never see on any receipt, because the receipt only shows what you spent, not what you erased. Buffett has never taken a dollar out of the snowball. Berkshire Hathaway does not pay dividends. When the company earns money, it reinvests every cent back into the machine. That is not frugality. That is physics. A snowball that keeps rolling without interruption does not just get bigger, it gets faster. The growth of the growth compounds. Removing money from the snowball is like pulling snow off while it is rolling downhill. You do not just lose the snow you took, you lose everything that snow would have collected for the rest of the hill. If you have been watching this and the math is starting to hit differently, if you feel the gap between knowing and doing and want something concrete to close it, check the first pinned comment below this video. It was made for people in exactly that position. December 1999. The Nasdaq has climbed 145% in 5 years. Every cab driver in Manhattan has a stock tip. College students are dropping out to start .com companies. And Barron's, one of the most respected financial publications in America, runs a cover story with 3 words. What's wrong, Warren? Berkshire Hathaway was down 44% compared to the tech-fueled market. The smartest investor alive was being called a dinosaur. He was 69 years old, and the world had decided he no longer understood money. Then the crash came. The Nasdaq lost 77% of its value. $5 trillion evaporated. Companies that were worth billions turned out to be worth nothing. And Berkshire Hathaway, it gained 80%. In the 3 years after that Barron's cover, Buffett was up 36%, while the S&P 500 was down 37%. He did not predict the crash. He did not short the market. He did not do anything clever. He simply refused to invest in anything he did not understand. That refusal, which looked like ignorance, turned out to be the most profitable decision of the decade. Buffett calls this the circle of competence. Know your circle of competence and stick within it. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital. Most people hear that and think it is about humility. It is not. It is about precision. Knowing what you do not know is the single most valuable financial skill a person can have. Because the money you lose on things outside your understanding is always more than the money you make on things inside it. Apply this to your own money, and the implications are uncomfortable. That cryptocurrency your coworker tripled his money on. Outside your circle, unless you can explain blockchain consensus mechanisms to a child. Those stock options a TikTok trader is flashing on your screen. Outside your circle, unless you understand theta decay and implied volatility. That real estate syndication your neighbor invited you into. Outside your circle, unless you have read the operating agreement line by line. The circle is not a limitation. It is a filter, and the filter saves you from every disaster you never had to experience. There is a psychological trap working against you here. Researchers call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know about a subject, the more confident you feel about your abilities in it. Beginners in investing consistently overestimate their returns by 30 to 40%. They feel confident precisely because they lack the knowledge to see how much they do not know. Buffett is the opposite. The more he knows, the more carefully he draws the boundaries of what he understands. Competence grows slowly. Overconfidence grows fast. And the market punishes overconfidence with surgical precision. Buffett waited until 2016 to buy Apple, 9 years after the iPhone launched. 9 years. Every analyst in the world was screaming about Apple for a decade, and Buffett sat on his hands, not because he could not see the stock going up, because he needed to understand the business at a level that most investors never reach. He studied the ecosystem, the customer loyalty, the switching costs, the recurring revenue streams. Only when the business made complete sense inside his circle did he move. That patience turned into a position worth over $170 billion. He was not late. He was prepared. Buffett talks about something that sounds simple until you really think about it. He calls it the inner scorecard versus the outer scorecard. The big question about how people behave, he once said, is whether they've got an inner scorecard or an outer scorecard. It helps if you can be satisfied with an inner scorecard. Those two sentences contain the entire explanation for why some people build wealth and others perform it. An outer scorecard measures your life by what other people see. The car in the driveway, the neighborhood you live in, the brand on your shirt, the restaurant you were photographed at, the vacation you posted. Every single one of these is a signal sent outward, a message that says, look at me, I am doing well, and every single one costs money that will never come back to you. The outer scorecard is an expense account that you pay to maintain other people's perception of your life. An inner scorecard measures your life by things no one else can see. Your actual net worth, not your income, your net worth, your savings rate, your months of runway, the number of mornings you wake up and do not feel a knot in your stomach about money, your freedom to walk away from a bad job without it destroying your family. None of these things show up on Instagram. None of them impress strangers at a dinner party. And yet they are the only numbers that matter when the rent is due and the market crashes and the layoff email arrives. Buffett once posed a thought experiment. Would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you are the worst? Or be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you are the greatest? Your answer reveals which scorecard runs your life. Most people hesitate. The pause itself is the problem. The fact that the outer perception even competes with inner reality shows how deep the wiring goes. A study by Charles Schwab found that 60% of millennials feel pressure to spend money they do not have after seeing friends' social media posts. 60%. The outer scorecard is no longer just about keeping up with the neighbors on your street. It's about keeping up with a curated highlight reel of every person you have ever met, filtered photos of vacations you cannot afford, restaurants you do not need, and lifestyles that may not even be real. Social media turned the outer scorecard into a global competition with no finish line and no winner. Consider the numbers. A $60,000 car versus a $15,000 car. The outer scorecard sees a $45,000 upgrade in status, comfort, prestige. The inner scorecard sees $45,000 invested at 10% for 30 years, $785,000. That is the real price tag of the nicer car, not what it costs today. What it costs you in the future, you will never have. Every outer scorecard purchase carries an invisible inner scorecard receipt that nobody bothers to read. Buffett's salary from Berkshire Hathaway is $100,000 per year. He has not taken a raise in over 35 years. His net worth is over $160 billion. From the outside, his compensation looks absurd. A CEO of the most valuable conglomerate on earth, earning less than a mid-level manager in Silicon Valley. But his inner scorecard is flawless. He does not need the salary to signal importance. He does not need the raise to feel valued. The number on his paycheck is irrelevant because the numbers that matter, ownership, compounding, freedom, are the only ones he tracks. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. Buffett did not say this casually in an interview. He said it after decades of proving it. His desk is nearly empty. His calendar is nearly empty. His portfolio is concentrated in a handful of companies he understands deeply instead of spread across hundreds he barely knows. The man who controls hundreds of billions of dollars spends most of his day reading and thinking, not meeting, not networking, not chasing, reading, thinking, and saying no. Every purchase you make is two decisions happening at the same time. It is a yes to spending and a no to compounding. When you sign up for a streaming service, yes to entertainment, no to $12 a month growing for 30 years. When you upgrade your phone, yes to a better camera, no to $1,000 compounding into $17,000. When you lease a car instead of buying used, yes to comfort today, no to the difference working for you for decades. Most people only hear the yes. The no is silent, but the no is where the money goes to die. The average American household spends over $200 a month on subscriptions, streaming, gym memberships, delivery services, cloud storage, apps they downloaded once and forgot about. A survey by West Monroe found that 84% of people underestimate their total subscription costs, usually by over 50%. They think they spend $100. They actually spend $219. That gap, the invisible money leaving every month, adds up to over $2,600 a year. Invested for 30 years at 10%, that forgotten money becomes $460,000, almost $500,000 gone. Not stolen, forgotten. Buffett's approach to decisions is aggressively simple. If it is not a clear yes, it is a no. There is no maybe in his system. During the dot-com boom, he said no to every technology stock for 5 years while the entire world was getting rich around him. Analysts abandoned Berkshire, investors wrote angry letters, business magazines questioned his competence. He sat in his office in Omaha, read annual reports, and said no. Then the crash wiped out $5 trillion, and his portfolio was the only one standing. Saying no did not just protect him. It positioned him to profit from everyone else's inability to do the same. The 72-hour rule is one of the most effective financial tools that costs absolutely nothing. Before any non-essential purchase over $100, wait 72 hours. Do not add it to the cart. Do not save it for later. Walk away. Research shows that roughly 70% of impulse purchases are regretted within a week. The 72-hour window eliminates most of them before they happen. It does not require willpower after the first decision. The first decision is to wait. Everything after that takes care of itself. Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Buffett said this in 1991, and it became one of the most repeated quotes in finance. But most people hear it and think about their own future. Buffett was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about the people who would come after him. The legacy rule is not about getting rich. It is about building something that outlasts you. Systems, habits, knowledge, structures that keep compounding long after you are gone. Generational wealth has been misunderstood for decades. People hear the term and picture trust funds and inherited mansions. But the most valuable inheritance has nothing to do with a bank account. A parent who teaches a child about compound interest at age 10 has given that child a 60-year runway. A family that talks openly about money at the dinner table produces adults who do not flinch when they look at their bank statements. The numbers matter, but the behavior behind the numbers matters more. Because money given without financial literacy disappears within one generation. Money understood multiplies forever. Buffett laid out his inheritance philosophy in a single sentence. Leave your children enough to do anything, but not enough to do nothing. He's giving away 99% of his fortune to charity. His children will receive enough to live well, but not enough to coast. The principle is precise. Too much money without financial education creates dependence. Too little creates resentment. The sweet spot is enough to provide options, combined with enough knowledge to use those options wisely. That combination is the real inheritance, not dollars. Capacity. Buffett did not just plan for his own legacy, he planned for Berkshire's. In January 2026, Greg Abel took over as CEO. Buffett spent decades building the succession, training leaders, creating systems, embedding the culture so deep into the company that it could outlive him. He once said, "The job of a great leader is to build something that does not need you anymore." That applies to wealth just as much as business. If your financial life depends entirely on your presence, if everything stops the moment you stop, then you have not built wealth. You have built a job. And jobs end. Only 17 states in America require any personal finance course for high school graduation. 17 out of 50. Students graduate knowing how to solve quadratic equations, but unable to explain how a credit card interest rate works. The system produces people who are excellent at earning money and terrible at keeping it, which is convenient for the banks, the credit card companies, and every institution that profits from financial ignorance. The most powerful legacy you can build is not a portfolio. It is the decision to break that cycle for your family. Teach one child how compound interest works at age 12, and you have changed the trajectory of an entire bloodline. Do the math on this, and the numbers will keep you up at night. $200 a month invested at 10% average annual return, starting from the day a child is born. By age 65, that account holds $3.5 million. The parent who starts that investment will never see that number. They will be gone. but their grandchild, the one sitting in the shade, will have options that most people spend their entire lives chasing and never reach. You do not have to get rich yourself to create generational wealth. You just have to start the snowball rolling early enough that time does what you cannot. Ben Graham, Buffett's mentor and the father of value investing, wrote, "The investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself." Every rule in this protocol exists because human nature works against wealth building. You are wired to spend, to signal, to keep up, to react, to panic, to chase. These 7 rules are not natural. They are deliberate overrides of every instinct your brain fires when money is involved. And that is exactly why they work, because almost nobody has the discipline to follow them. 7 rules: the moat, the runway, the snowball, the circle, the scorecard, the the legacy. None of them require a genius-level IQ. None of them require insider connections or a trust fund or a high-paying job. They require exactly one thing: the willingness to behave differently from everyone around you, to protect when others are reckless, to wait when others are rushing, to say no when everyone is screaming yes, to measure yourself by numbers nobody else can see. Most people who watch this video agreed with every word. The moat made sense, the snowball made sense, the circle made sense, and tomorrow morning they will check their phone, see a notification for something they do not need, and spend money they could have invested, because understanding the rules and following them are separated by a canyon that most people never cross. Knowing is free. Doing costs everything comfortable about your current life. Buffett was once asked what his single greatest piece of investment advice would be. He did not say buy index funds. He did not say start early. He said, invest in yourself, your knowledge, your discipline, your habits, your ability to sit still when the world is moving in every direction around you. The wealth protocol is not a strategy you apply to your money. It is a system you install in yourself. The money follows. It always does, but only if the person managing it has the operating system to handle it. If you stayed until the end, write in the comments, "I follow the protocol." There is another video waiting on your screen right now, the next piece of how money really works. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.